All right, good morning. It is now time for Savannah Lexicon. This is WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. And I am so pleased today. We got a little business to take care of here, but I'll go ahead and tell you that Alderman Bill Durrence is my guest today, and we're going to get to him in just a minute when I get through a little bit of house cleaning, as it were. I do need to tell you that the viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff. All right, and if you are just tuning in, and maybe this is your first time, this is Savannah Lexicon, and we are on every Tuesday and Thursday from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock in the morning, and the show is essentially a conversation with some of Savannah's representatives of some of Savannah's local government, social service organizations, cultural organizations, educational organizations, artists, writers, craftsmen, and women, most anyone who can help shed some light on how to live a well-informed, full life here in the most beautiful city in the nation, Savannah. All right. And Alderman Durrence, how are you today? I sure appreciate your coming in.
Oh, I'm fine. I appreciate you asking me. Glad to be here. And I should say that any opinions I expressed this morning are mine only and not necessarily shared by any of my colleagues in City Council.
Well, I like that. I like that. Yes, indeed. Well, you got your own disclaimer there. And but, you know, that's one of the things, quite honestly, I like about you is you don't mind disagreeing with everybody else on the council.
My wife would say that's a normal behavior.
Well, that's a good thing, though, because I think, well, for instance, if I'm not mistaken, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. In fact, as we go through this whole program, correct me if I'm wrong about anything, which could certainly happen. I think you were the only one who said, voted essentially or refused to vote against the music venue on Bay Street. Is that right?
No.
That's not right. Okay. Well, see there, I've already started off wrong.
That was, I believe that was...
Stage on Bay.
Yeah. I believe that was Julian Miller.
Okay.
And Julian was right. And
well,
I think
I
probably... Well, he was right from a, as best I can tell, a legal position, which is
clearly
ultimately kind of what we have to base our things on.
Sure.
I voted my first vote when I voted against the license for the Stage on Bay was, I don't want to say a wasted vote. I think I knew when I did it that it couldn't stand. Yeah. But one of the things that is important to me and was important to me in running for this job was to represent residents, residents in neighborhoods. And
right.
It feels like all too often the people that live here don't have as strong a voice on council. Certainly for downtown, it felt like that. So when some of the neighbors on the west side were making the point that they felt like their neighborhood wasn't being represented very well, I didn't disagree with them. And I don't mean that their representative, Alderman Johnson, is not doing his job, because he also voted against giving the license.
Right.
And he had helped sensitize a lot of council in the city to some issues the west side has, particularly along the Bay Street corridor with the alcohol density issue, the sheer number of alcohol licenses. So I think it was more trying to think of the word, a moral support than
right.
an expectation that we would actually stop the license. But yeah, that was Alderman Miller, who just kind of from the day one on that said, this is what we're required to do. That there's a misunderstanding a lot of people have about alcohol licenses coming to city council.
Yeah.
And something I've tried to change with no luck so far. when a request for a license comes to council, by the time it gets to city council, it's essentially a done deal. There is a lot of sort of implication that by it coming to council and us voting the way we do, that we have some option to turn that license down, but we don't.
Yeah, well, not if the zoning is there, right?
It's a zoning issue. There are some other things that the police department goes through, depending on who's asking for the license and that sort of thing. So there are a number of steps to screen an applicant and a location for. But
he had already gone through all that, right?
But once it gets to us, all of that, in theory, all of that has been done.
Right.
There was one case we discovered where it hadn't been, and the request for the license was withdrawn before we voted on it. But so knowing that the vote I cast the first time was not technically the correct vote, I did it anyway in a kind of solidarity with those residents and with Alderman Johnson.
All right.
Sometimes you do things like that to make a statement of sorts, even though you're not going to win the battle.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I can understand, I can appreciate the fact that you guys do want to listen to the voice of the community. That's a good thing in general. But I mean, again, that was illegal. Clearly, I mean, it was even stated during the course of the thing that your legal counsel said there's no reason that we can deny this or should deny this. But anyway, I appreciate your kind of explaining that a little bit. And I don't know where I think I just had the sense for some reason that you did it, because I knew that you were a guy who would not necessarily just go along with the crowd. And so in that case, but you had your own reasons for doing that, and that's understandable. All right. Well, yeah, I wanted to get you on. And first off, let's do this maybe just as a sort of a way to get warmed up and to get started, and that's to just tell us a little bit about yourself before we start talking about all these plans flying around all through the air around here in Savannah. You're from here.
I am a native Savannian. I was born about half a mile from where we're sitting.
Is that right?
Yeah, the old Candler Hospital.
Okay, right. Candler Hospital. Okay. And you live in Savannah now.
I do. My wife and I have a house downtown.
In downtown, so you're actually in your district.
You have to be in your district, but
true. Okay. You'd been a downtown neighborhood association ward captain.
Yeah, I don't know how long that went on. Probably 20 years or so. The gentleman who had been the ward captain in our neighborhood for a very long time, Porter Carswell, was an old friend of mine. And Porter got sick and was not doing well, and just felt like he could. The biggest part of that job is mostly just to make sure that the holiday decorations get put up in December. Okay. I took the job as more of an organizing job, creating an email list and trying to communicate more with people in the neighborhood. But I got the job because Porter wasn't feeling well enough to continue doing it.
Yeah.
And at the time, Esther Shaver was still very active with the Downtown Neighborhood Association.
Right.
And Porter and Esther had a secret meeting, did not invite me to the meeting, and voted to give me the job.
Voted to give it to you.
Yes. So
okay.
That's how I got that job, and I turned it into an opportunity to start doing a little bit more organizing beyond just the holiday decorations.
Okay. And you, active member of Historic Savannah Foundation, served 2 terms, city's tourism advisory committee.
Yes.
And you're a professional photographer, and you had worked.
I am retired, although sort of retired.
Yeah.
The council job takes up an awful lot of my time.
I bet it does.
I've retired a couple of years ago from the job that I had been doing primarily, which was teaching workshops and leading photo trips and teaching photography classes around the country and sometimes out of the country.
Okay.
And I had been doing a lot of that for almost 30 years for Nikon. First as an employee in their technical services department, and then as a contractor for several years. And
okay.
That program was changing, and the volume of classes being reduced. And I think I had reached a point where I had probably done it long enough, if not maybe even a year or two too long. And the teaching the same material over and over again. At some point, it's harder to deliver it with the same enthusiasm.
Yes.
And so I think I might have been reaching that point. I still enjoyed it, but it was time for a change, and that was about the time I decided to run for council too. And that job involved a lot of travel, and that would have made it very difficult to do the council job. So I took it as an opportunity to sort of semi-retire. I still do an occasional commercial assignment when asked.
All right. Well, I, for one, am glad you did, because I'm glad you're on City Council, 2nd District, which is, wow. It's a tough one, I would think. I mean, obviously we've got the historic downtown, and you've got such a disparity in this district.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. I mean,
so
the district, is the historic downtown, and then it kind of goes all the way out to, I guess, Victory, sort of on the east side, essentially. Is that?
Well, the approximate boundaries, there's a couple of little bump outs to this, but the boundaries are River Street, and it's actually the center line of River Street. The north side of River Street, the little strip between the River Street and the water, belongs to Van. That's First District.
You're kidding me.
No, but from River Street, the way boundaries are drawn, of course, has to be done in a way that gives us all equal population. But from River Street to Victory Drive, and from the center line of MLK to Ash Street, which is just west of the Truman Parkway.
Okay.
So just the side of the Parkway. All so right. It is quite a unique district, I think, and when I say that, I don't mean to sound like I'm saying it's somehow more special than any of the other districts. I wind up with 5 other guys, vehemently disagreeing with me about that. I think it's unique in the mix that we've got in several ways. One, it's probably the district with the highest contrast of income. Of affluence and poverty, between the more of the downtown area and the east side of the district. Yeah. It has I'm pretty sure, I haven't done an actual survey of this, but it looks likely that it has the biggest mix of use because it not only has all the residential aspects of the different neighborhoods, but we've got pretty much most of the government facilities, not all certainly, but most, with the city, county, state, and federal activities that happen within the 2nd District.
Right.
We've got a lot of educational activities happening within the district. Of course, it's probably the biggest concentration of commercial activities, businesses, retail, as well as offices. It's a substantial mix, and physically, it looks, again, I haven't measured it, but if you just look at the district maps, physically it looks like it's the smallest in geographic area, which would speak to the density of the district, too, since we have to have the same resident population. I believe it's about 25,000 residents per district.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot going on these days. There's a heck of a lot, and I guess well, let's try and get a handle on this thing, because there are several things going on. There's, of course, the big, Savannah Forward, I guess, planning thing that is going on, and that's kind of primary at the moment, I suppose. And you're having these strategic planning meetings for the public. Yours is May 17th, right?
Yes.
6 to 8 p.m., Savannah Civic Center. Because you're getting the public's input on what they want in this big planning thing, which really is establishing things. Not that it's going to be written in stone, but the idea is almost to go even as much as 20 years out, at least conceptually, right?
I think so. The further out you go, the looser plans are, whether you intend them to be or not.
Right.
Just because you never know what's going to happen in the interim, and everything you do changes what you'll do next. Sure. So I think the city manager, Rob, is trying to look that far out in his planning, because if you have that kind of long-range goal, you can establish your short-term goals and your intermediate goals.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things, and I think it's important that we get that. I don't feel like we've had anything like that. And it's important that we have it for a lot of decisions, particularly spending decisions, because it's easy if you just look at every spending request. Just to use budget as one example. If you look at every spending request that comes to you, a lot of them are very worthwhile things.
Sure.
Nobody would argue that this is just, well, there are some things that are just bad ideas too. But it would be real easy to get in a position, and I think this has happened in the past, where you say, well, this is a good thing, this is a noble idea, this is a worthwhile cause, so we'll give them some money.
Right.
But if the money you're spending is done in some sort of uncoordinated way like that, then you're not really getting the best impact from that money. So having that long-range view of where you're headed allows you to make a lot of decisions that contribute toward that. Where you're trying to go, rather than taking you off on three different, paths in directions that don't support that. We have a finite budget.
Sure.
For that matter, if we doubled it tomorrow somehow, it would still be finite. You can't have everything that you'd like to have.
Sure.
And so we have to find a better, smarter way to make budgeting decisions than what we've been doing. So
wholeheartedly agree.
A lot of the problem we got into last year was that we had a budget that had been mostly prepared before Rob got here, before the new city manager got here.
Right.
But he had to take it on and finish it up to prepare for this year's budget, and we wound up with a $16 million shortfall. And that, he had weeks to figure out where to either get that 16 or to cut it out of the budget. And so what we need is a better planning process, and that's where he's headed with this, is to give him a better way of organizing or reorganizing staff and departments so that we get better efficiencies that way, and then a better way to identify in our spending priorities what supports the goal and what might be, a good thing, but we just can't afford it because it doesn't support the goal.
Yeah. Well, good on him, because I like the way he's starting out. I think he was a good hire. It seems to me at this point. Of course, time will tell. But
that's true. But my hunch is that hiring Rob is going to be the one best thing we've done in the 4 years of this council.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Good.
I'm very impressed so far. He has not run in and just started trying to change things overnight. He's taken his time to really get a feel for what's working, what isn't working, get a feel for staff and their capabilities, and moving slowly and very methodically into getting a handle on this stuff. Just this Savannah Forwards program, he brought Liz Tashin with him.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
To help manage that. Someone
Which is
he
great.
knew before, and she seems to really be good. They seem to be a good partnership. And they have hired a company to help facilitate this. There have been, I believe, 3 of these meetings so far, and then 3 more coming up. I was out of town all last week, but
you were in Seattle, right?
I was in Seattle.
Yeah, we're going to bring that up too.
So the thing they've done is brought in a company, and I can't remember the name of the company right this minute, but this company is helping facilitate, and it's being done in such a thorough way. I've got a meeting on the 15th, a private meeting on the 15th with this company, so that they can prep me to do the meeting, and they will facilitate a lot of the work in the meeting with the public.
Right. But
it's just I'm impressed with the thoroughness of the way they're putting this thing together, instead of everybody just showing up and, like so many meetings, having a random character to them. This is a much better organized approach, and I think that will help. And from what I've heard, the previous meetings have gone well. So. Well,
you were at one at least, weren't you?
No, not the district meetings.
Not the district meetings.
Well, like you were saying earlier, there are a lot of things going on. There's tons of meetings. I seem to be going to meetings every day and night. But the meeting I had been at last week, and there's one more of these as well, was about the parking matter study.
Okay, that was
which is a different thing.
All right, now you did have, and this was not one of these meetings that is specifically scheduled for Savannah forward, but not long ago you did have a public meet an alderman type thing.
Oh, right. That's something that Alderwoman Bell started before I was elected, called Ask an Alderman.
Ask an Alderman, right.
Where she will get together with a district alderman, and some of the council takes advantage of this with her, and some don't. I did it last year with her because I felt like I was so new. It was good to have guidance from somebody that had been around for a little bit on council, and we did it last year, and then we did it again first part of this year. I had one person at least at that meeting want to know why we don't do them more frequently, and it would be nice to do that in some ways, but I think that if you try to do something a lot, it loses its impact. And
true. Okay.
And there's a limited amount of time for doing something like this. I try to attend every neighborhood association meeting in my district. It's getting a little more difficult these days because the Downtown Neighborhood Association, the Victorian Neighborhood Association, and the Thomas Square metropolitan neighborhood organizations that have merged, all three of those groups are meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. So, and those are the three biggest neighborhood organizations in my district. So I'd like to find a way to get them to separate their meetings so that I can get to all of them. But Alderwoman Bell, who also lives in the 2nd District, kind of shares duties with me of at least one of us getting to these different meetings so that we put in an appearance. And then as much as possible, I'll get to those neighborhood association meetings. Plus, there's always other stuff going on. I probably have a dozen meetings a week. Sometimes it seems like. And
did you know what you were getting into?
No, I did not. That's not. Excuse me. That's not a regret. But when I first started looking at the campaign, I spoke to a number of people just to get advice about whether or not I should do it and how to do it if I did. And I remember someone who had worked at the national level in political campaigns told me that after talking to me, he felt like I knew a lot. I had been very active on certain issues, downtown issues, for about 25 years. Yeah, through the Downtown Neighborhood Association and on my own. And he said, you are knowledgeable about a lot of stuff, and you think you understand a lot, and you do. But you're going to find out how much you don't know very quickly, and that has certainly been true. It's really, I suspect it's one of those things where until you're in it, you just don't know. You can't know. There's so much to it, and I'm sure. Mostly it's interesting. Sometimes it's fun. The mayor seems to be having a lot of fun, but that's his personality. That's not my personality. But it's nice to have him there, with that kind of cheerleading going on too. Sometimes. Well,
he was with you at that, wasn't he? Now, see, everything I'm saying today is wrong when I'm trying to make a point, so I ought to back off. But when you had the Waters Avenue Ask an Alderman, was he right? He was there then too. I think,
right. There are three people on council who represent the city at large, the mayor and the two at-large aldermen, Alderwoman Bell and Alderman Foster. And so when I have that meeting for that district, it's also their meeting, because they represent the people in that district as well. Everybody in the city of Savannah has 4 representatives on council. Their district representative plus the two at-large plus the mayor. Right. And so they try to attend as much of this as possible, not just mine, but other council members as well. And then Alderman Miller seems to turn up all the time too. I mean, he's very involved, and so a lot of times Julian will show up at these meetings that may not be his district, but there's a lot of overlap between the things that we do with the different districts, and so we try to be supportive of each other as much as possible.
And that was in Starlandia.
No, that Ask an Alderman meeting was at the community center we have in the Waters Avenue Shopping Center. Okay. And I think that was in February.
And what kind of feedback, in general, did you get that day? What kind of questions were asked from the public, and what are people looking for? What did they express?
Well, I don't remember specifically. I can tell you generally because pretty much every meeting winds up being a lot of the same general whatever the hot topic is at the time. Sure. Some of it is very specific, and one of the things that I try to do at those meetings is have as much city staff there as possible.
Yeah.
And city staff is really good about that sort of thing anyway, because most of the neighborhood association meetings I go to, there'll be somebody there from a variety of different departments. The police department will have somebody there to talk about neighborhood issues and, crime watch stuff, that sort of thing. The fire department's always there to talk about, what at this time of year, what things to be cautious about, to make sure everybody knows that they'll come install smoke detectors, they'll come change your batteries, they'll come do an analysis of your home to make sure everything's as safe as it can be. We'll have code enforcement officers, sanitation. I mean, a number of different departments will show up just to answer questions and make reports about things that are going on at pretty much all the neighborhood association meetings.
Okay.
At the Ask an Alderman meeting, we bumped that up, build that up even more with more staff there, department heads where possible. And we'll have someone from 311 there who's taking notes about everything that comes up. So part of what comes up in those meetings is very specific responses. There's an empty lot, three spaces down from my home that somebody's using as a dump yard. Yeah. What can we do about it? And sanitation will respond. I mean, so that kind of thing.
Okay.
There'll be questions about things that might have come up with council that people don't understand all of the details of it. I believe there was one question about the blight tax that we did a while back, sometime last year. We passed an ordinance that allows the city to do a 7 times factor on the property taxes for blighted property. So there are people that worry, am I going to get thrown out of my house and it's sold because I don't have the money to fix it? And so you explain there, well, no, because it's not going to be declared blighted as long as it's occupied.
Right.
And then we have city programs to help. If you can't afford to fix your house and it needs work, we've got a variety of city programs we can come up with to try to help you. We can not necessarily go in and just pay for having a bunch of work done, but we do have some things that we can do to try to help. Other questions that would come up would be about some of the initiatives that might be going on in the city at the time, the Parking Matters, for instance, or the Arena District, or just a mix of things like that.
Okay. And so any idea when you'll have another one of those?
I don't have anything
scheduled right now. Okay. All right.
I mean, we have a lot of meetings scheduled, but that specific, more broad, just
the public,
for the whole second district to come ask questions. Now, I guess the closest thing to that, in essence, is the same thing, but under a different name, is the strategic planning initiatives, where everybody in the district is being asked to come to this and talk about whatever they think is important.
Okay. What can you say? And of course, it's a work in progress, but the Savannah Forward planning program. What can you say about it? What can you give us some sense of how it seems to be shaping up? Some of the major.
Well, I haven't been to any of the meetings, so no. Okay. But I can tell you the process that we're going through is each of these individual meetings in the districts is giving the people from these districts or anybody else that wants to show up the ability to voice their concerns about whatever it is, from no matter how pedestrian or how large scale the issue might be. And all of that is being recorded in some manner. I haven't been in a meeting, so I don't know if they're taping it or taping. I'm old. But somehow they're recording that, and they'll have a record of all the different ideas and things that have come up in these meetings. On June the 2nd and 3rd, the council is having a retreat to go through all of that. We'll have 2 8-hour days, June 2nd and 3rd, where we will wade through all of the material that's been collected through all of those meetings. And then we'll start establishing the plan. Then is we'll establish priorities from those things.
Right.
And you know, what are the things that are our goals? What do we want to work on? What, you know, and in establishing those priorities, prioritizing the priorities, of course. What's the most important? What's second? What third? And we'll spend those 2 days doing that. From that direction that the city manager gets from council, he'll use that then going forward, preparing the budget and creating initiatives or deferring initiatives, whatever's necessary. One of the things that is a problem for the city right now, city staff, is just what you said earlier. There's so much going on.
No kidding.
Just a report recently just capital projects alone, we have 298 capital projects in some state of effort to the tune of $675 million.
Yeah, that is
and it's a lot to manage. And that's just the capital. That's outside of day-to-day stuff.
Right, sure, yeah.
I sent a picture of something I saw that I thought was a nice traffic calming feature. I saw in Portland when I was out in Seattle for this conference last week. And I sent the photograph of this thing to the city manager, just saying, I think this is kind of a nice idea that we might be able to use. And he did like the idea. He sent me back a note saying, yeah, that would have been useful at something we've already addressed in a different way. But he also said that city council members are not going to be allowed to leave town anymore to go to any meetings, because we come back with a whole new list of things to do for him.
Yeah.
So we
God forbid any new ideas.
Right. Yeah, we've got a catch-up list to get done.
Okay, and that was the Congress of New Urbanism,
yes,
right? Which is going to be held here,
right,
next year.
Right. One of the reasons I wanted to go was because some friends of mine are involved in that, and they're sort of new urbanist thinkers. And if you ask me to give you a definition of new urbanism, I don't think I could do it. But it's really about smarter design for cities. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons this is really important is the population trending right now is to move into cities instead of away.
Right.
And so a lot of the planning that we need to be doing is how we deal with increased densities, how we deal with all the things that go along with that. One of the things that we're already trying to deal with is the parking matters, for instance.
Sure.
So I wanted to go out to hear the ideas of some of the people that work with this daily, designers, planners, architects.
Yeah.
And saw some interesting presentations, heard some fascinating stuff. We had a contingent from Savannah between government and private and neighborhood organizations and all of about a dozen or more people that were there for a variety of different reasons, some developers.
Good.
And between us, we all saw some speakers that we thought were terrific. And a few of us want to sit down sometime in the next week or two and put together a list of 4 or 5 of these folks that we thought were particularly dynamic, had something to say that could be really useful in Savannah, and try to bring them here.
To get them for next year.
Well, no, not as part of next year's program.
Oh, okay.
Because that program will be for people who sign up for the Congress.
Right.
What we would like to do is, and some of those people are regular speakers at this event. Some of them wouldn't be, but what we would like to do is bring them here to make presentations to our community, to people that live here. But the other reason for me going out there was to get a sense of this meeting, because it'll probably bring about 2,000 people here next year for a week-long conference.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal. Is it going to be the same time of year, more or less, next year?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, sometime in May. And the thing about this meeting, and they make a big deal that it's a Congress, not a conference, is certainly there are a lot of classroom presentations, but they also do a lot of hands-on work. They do workshops, they do tours, they just really get people on the street. One of the things that they try to do is avoid, where possible, normal convention-style facilities. And they'll use meeting rooms around. They will use smaller hotels in some cases because they want people spread out and they want people walking the street.
Good,
to see what's going on. And then they'll do programs where they'll identify 4 or 5, maybe 2 or 3, depends on what they've got, what resources they've got, but things that are issues within the local community. And they will actually put together a program working on that with all of these folks that do this stuff all over, and they leave that, whatever they come up with, those projects, they leave that for the city.
Right.
And we'll get, I heard somebody put a $500,000 value on that work that, at the end of the conference, they'll just present that to the city.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
It's a fascinating thing. And I mean, I had a chance to not only go to some good classes, I got a little healthier while I was out there because I did a 3-hour bicycle tour of Seattle one day, and just seeing what they've done with bicycle facilities and infrastructure.
Okay. We're going to need to hold that thought if you don't mind, because I actually have a question from one of our guys too who wanted me to ask a question regarding that. So we'll get right back to that, but we do need to take a break. We're going to take just a very brief musical interlude, and then we are going to come back for the second half. more or less, of Savannah Lexicon. So everybody just hang tight. We won't be gone long.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com.
We're back, and this is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. We are speaking, if you're just joining us here on Savannah Lexicon, we are speaking with Alderman Bill Durrence, and we were having a good discussion about all sorts of things. We left off... Alderman, talking about your being in Seattle and having the opportunity to go out and check out. And I noticed you came in today on your bicycle.
I did.
So you are certainly a bicyclist yourself.
Not as much as I should be, but I'm working on that.
Okay. And so you got a chance to see some of what they do in Seattle? And
I did. One of the tours that I was able to sign up for in this Congress was a 3-hour bike tour around the city of Seattle to see what they had done, what was working well, and where the gaps were and what they're working on. One of the things I thought was really interesting about it was the tour was led by the city's traffic engineer. And to me, that spoke volumes about the issue of addressing a variety of mobility issues instead of focusing on the automobile. The traffic engineers, a lot of traffic engineers tend to. it was fascinating. One of the things that he pointed out, too, that I thought was interesting was he said it's for them the issue of making bike facilities safer is because what drives it there is more recreational use. And so they're looking for ways to make it safer for families riding with their kids and that sort of thing.
Right.
The next day I did a 6-hour bike ride in Portland, and the leader of that ride was the city's bicycle director. The city of Portland actually has a position of a bicycle director.
Now that's dedication.
And they have done an amazing job. It's a boom town. To see the way that place is growing in the few years since I've been there before. And they have done an amazing job of infrastructure all over that really addresses the issues of pedestrians and bicyclists. And he said one of the reasons that they had to do as much, or, it's probably a chicken and egg thing, but in the 15-year period from 1995 to 2010, they added 55,000 commuters to the city, and 20,000 of them are using bicycles to commute.
Wow!
So they've got a huge infrastructure, and they've got a huge population supporting this too.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating to see all of that, to see how that's being done.
Okay. And, of course, that's an issue that certainly has been looked at and is being looked at, I'm sure, as in this Savannah Forward process as well. I did want to mention one of WRUU's music hosts. He has a music show, John Bennett. He's also He's
the head of the Savannah Bicycle Campaign.
The Savannah Bicycle Campaign. He asked if I would ask you a question, and he noted that Savannah hasn't installed any significant bicycle infrastructure in more than 5 years. Will the Savannah Forward plan involve a mechanism for building more sidewalks, bike lanes, and et cetera?
Well, I'll throw that back at John, that it kind of depends on how effectively he does his job.
There you go.
The whole thing about these strategic meetings is to hear what the highest priorities of the citizens are. So how much gets done is going to depend on how high up the priority list that gets, and that will be a function of how many people are asking for something like that.
Sure.
It would be a high priority for me because I think it's more than just about bicycle paths for people that ride bicycles. It's all about a quality of life issue and how you deal with pedestrians and the whole nature of what kind of city you want to be.
Absolutely.
But there's also a limited budget. I mean, the bike director in Portland talked about one real conflict they have between doing quality or using temporary materials that allow them to do substantially more facilities. So it's just a balancing act. You can do 1 mile of really quality facilities, or you can do 60 miles with temporary stuff. And so you have a balancing act there. Okay. But yeah, that how that comes out, before this council took office, the previous council did pass the Complete Streets Ordinance, which is supposed to lead toward more bicycle infrastructure, more sidewalks, more pedestrian-friendly stuff, but nothing much has been done since then.
Okay, and just a real quick reminder, I just want to keep drilling this into everybody's head. These public strategic planning meetings for District 2, May 17th, 6 to 8 p.m., Savannah Civic Center. District 1 is May 15th at Godley Station School. Yes, so, this is what it's for, folks. Get your thoughts, your desires, your wishes out there and communicate it on these dates for these public meetings. Very, very important. Okay, we're going to try, and this is going to be a difficult thing. There's so much flying around, but we're going to try to help everybody get a little bit of a handle on all the planning going on in this community. There is so much. The Savannah Forward Initiative is...
Let me add one thing to your promotion of the Savannah Forward and coming to those meetings.
Yeah.
At a large community meeting I was at a few months ago, the opening remarks made by the president of the organization included something I think it's important for everybody to keep in mind. Decisions are made by the people who show up.
There you go. So couldn't be said better. You're right. I mean, the years and years worth of Savannah's future are being decided now. So you got to show up.
Right. And that's something that has been a frustration for me in this job is the number of people and I get it. I understand why it happens this way to some extent. But the number of people who show up at the end of a process and then want to complain about it
right.
or want to disagree with it after a year or 2 or 3 years worth of work has been done. I mean, you have to participate in the process early. You
That's
can't
true.
keep coming in at the end and saying, no, wait, stop, I don't like this, or
Right.
I think you should do it differently.
Be there from the beginning. That's kind of like people who don't vote and then want to complain about
Right.
the government. You know, I'm sorry, shut up. You don't have a right.
Right.
If you don't vote, you don't have a right to say anything. Well, if you want to have anything to any input on the future of Savannah that's being decided now, you need to show up. Okay, so the Savannah Forward movement, as we talked about a little bit off air for a minute there, was, is kind of starting from scratch. Now, there's been all sorts of plans that have been created in city council and for the city and for the county and all of this forever and ever, amen. But for this Savannah Forward planning is working off of, obviously, a sort of a framework of reference of the scenario and things that have been tried and failed or worked well, but to a large extent, it's kind of starting anew. Is that correct?
Right. We are always building on what exists currently, certainly. But yeah, somewhere in City Hall, I haven't found it yet, but somewhere in City Hall, there is a large bookcase, or maybe several, loaded down with years of studies that have been done that are collecting dust, and no follow through was ever done with them.
Yeah, Lord knows a bunch of studies have been done through the years.
So some of that information is actually still useful, and I think some of that gets picked and cherry-picked sometimes where it's helpful. So some of that may be foundational for some of these things as well.
Right,
because we have done a lot of work over the years to try to have better data.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there's been a lot of studies done through the years, so surely we're working off of that. But still, a fresh look at everything and for a longer-term basis. All right, so we just want to kind of help people get a little bit of a handle. One thing, of course, recently was the Metropolitan Planning Commission came out with their
it's the
comprehensive plan. That has been essentially, as I understand it, accepted, if it were, for the county, that we are already working off of that plan.
Right. I think the comprehensive plan, that's a requirement, a legal requirement that we have to do, and I think it's every 5 years it has to be updated, something like that. The comprehensive plan is essentially a land use plan. It's the 30,000-foot view of how we want to organize land use within the county, where we want industry to be, where we want residential to be, where we want mixed use. And, of course, a lot of that's already, especially in a county that's as thoroughly developed as this one, a lot of that is already mostly established. But that comprehensive plan is really the large-scale view of how we want development patterns to happen in the community, and it includes the specific land use map, which all of that then leads to the very specific street-level work of zoning. So in theory, zoning then is based on nothing ever works out quite like theory is, but zoning then is a function of following the land use map.
Okay. And we also brought in, and there was a little controversy, I suppose you might say, about this, bringing in another firm that we paid about $100,000 or something to look at it at a little bit different level, a little more detailed level.
I'm not sure which you're referring to.
Okay. Well, let's fly right by that then. The other thing that we had, of course, the SDRA, Savannah Development and Renewal Authority. They kind of put their 2 cents in worth here, really thinking, and I guess in terms of the Savannah Forward process.
They are involved in a variety of things.
Yeah.
The Savannah Development and Renewal Authority is a quasi-government agency. It operates independent but under contract with the city, and it's funded through grants from the city.
Right.
And their job is exactly what it says in the title, redevelopment. They are assigned specific tasks, and probably the majority of their work right now is they are assigned to be the development authority for the redevelopment of Montgomery Street and Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Right. Those are the ongoing projects that they're
they
very
have
much
the sort of overwatch authority to know what property's there, know what new is trying to come in, find people that want to do some development in that area, help expedite where they can, help make people understand or help people understand what the enterprise rules are. That's all of that area is an enterprise zone where you get tax abatement and job credit funding to help. You may, depending on what your project is, you may be able to get hookup fees for sewer and water abated. So there's a variety of incentives that the city can offer to help someone in an enterprise corridor like that. So they help not administer, but help people understand that and can help go to bat for somebody, small business that might be having trouble dealing with all that.
Okay, and they in late March they submitted a report to the city officials about how to reach goals, talking about stimulating downtown residential growth and to balance tourism and business concerns. So they did issue this report very recently, last couple of months. Okay, we also have the tourism management plan, which is talking about, again, balancing tourism and that sort of thing. And if my information is correct, then sort of through June is kind of one phase with some face-to-face strategy sessions, and then starting July and August to kind of, if we're on this schedule, to review things and present the plan, and then fall to begin implementation and measuring progress in the fall.
Right.
Is that about right? So what can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, my first thought is we're about 30 years not too late, but 30 years late in doing this. Tourism around here, and some of my friends in the tourism industry have heard me say this before, and I think they cringe when I do, but tourism here has been the tail wagging the dog for a long time. And I think that not everyone, some of the people certainly in tourism management understand this, but the city is what people are coming here to see. The homes, the things that are created by the people that live here. People aren't coming here to go shopping on Broughton Street. Now, they will when they're here, and that's great.
Yeah.
But nobody drives to Savannah or flies to Savannah to go to the Gap or Banana Republic.
No, you're right.
So one of the things that I think we've needed for some time is to be much more sensitive to how tourism impacts the residential character of the city, that we don't damage the very product people are coming here to see.
Yeah.
And so this tourism management plan is to do that, to find a way to have a better balance, and what the ultimate recommendations from the committee will be, or from the company will be, we don't know yet. But I'm sure that it will be a balance of, asking for more stringent things in some places, areas that are more predominantly residential. It will probably recommend that some certain tourism activities be allowed, or even be allowed to be expanded in a way that some residents may not like. I suspect it's going to be one of those things where everybody's going to be a little unhappy, which unfortunately seems to
hard
be the
to please
marker of
everybody.
a good plan anymore.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think will come out of it is a recommendation that we spread tourism out. Right now, the heaviest impact, almost all of the impact of tourism activities lands in the 1.2 square mile landmark historic district.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's a very small area to absorb the volume of that kind of activity. And if we have any intent for that activity to continue growing, we can't just keep jamming more and more into that small space. So we've got to figure out a way for the tourism industry to spread out. To start, and we've got a city that has got a lot of history that goes beyond the landmark district. And one of the things I learned in teaching classes over the years is when you're making a presentation on stage and you forget to say something, don't bring it up, because people don't know what you don't tell them.
Right.
And so in presenting the city, a lot of times I think that some in the tourism industry feels like, well, we've got to do this or we've got to do that because that's what people come looking for. when in fact they just come looking to have an experience in this city they've heard about.
Right.
And if you don't tell them that you're not going to show them something in particular, then they're
Right.
not going to know.
Yeah,
They
that's
can't
true.
see everything anyway. So
Yeah.
the idea that you've got to show them the landmark district because that's what they want to see, that's not that it's. They're going to want to see some of that, but they don't have to see all of it, and they can see other parts of town
Right.
as well. So there's ways to spread this out.
So we tried a little bit. Starlandia is kind of
Starland area,
becoming.
Starlandia is specifically a business, but the Starland area,
I mean the area, right?
is really starting to take off.
Yeah.
That's one of those areas where the initial cleaning up and starting to happen there comes from people who are looking for cheap rents, artists and other folks like that,
Mm-hmm.
who are just looking for a cheap place to work. They don't care. It doesn't need to look fancy or anything like that. And then, there's a little buildup of people and then businesses supporting that in an area, and pretty soon it's a successful neighborhood. And, of course, the people that started it move on to some other place where they can find cheap rents because the rent isn't cheap anymore.
No,
so,
it
and for
certainly
anybody that's
is
looking
not.
for that space, Waters Avenue is the place to go.
Wow. Okay.
Waters is my project. That's the place that I really want to start seeing some redevelopment happen, and I think we will. It's just taking a lot of time for somebody to want to put money into the place.
Yeah. Okay.
It's also an enterprise zone where there's tax abatement, property tax abatements, and job creation credits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I may have to think about that because it's getting too expensive down here. I can tell you that much. Okay. Also, recently, the Savannah River Landing master plan was kind of put forward, and from what I could see, it looked pretty good. We're running out of time here, so give me a nutshell just on your thoughts on that.
Well, the plan that came forward recently was a redesign from the original plan, which the original plan mimicked the grid pattern of downtown a little bit more than this current plan does. It will all change a little bit over the years as development is played out over the next 7 or 8 years, and as client needs have to be addressed.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to the city, and I'm not so convinced that we need to keep trying to duplicate the old city. I think that we need to be looking forward as much as we look back.
Okay.
And having some new stuff happen is not a bad thing.
Okay. All right. Alderman, I hope you're going to come back because we have barely scratched the surface. There's so much going on, and you're right here in the downtown historic district, and we hope you'll come back to see us. We're going to have to pretty close out. Any particular, just real quick, short, final statement, or have you kind of?
Well, I think we've probably hit most of it. I guess the one thing I would ask people to do is I hear from a lot of people with whether it's a complaint or an endorsement or anything else, but whatever it is they're talking about, they tend to have a very limited amount of information. So what I would really encourage people to do is what we talked about earlier, show up at the meetings, take the time to read the documents, be a little bit more thoroughly educated when you want to speak on something. That makes it a lot easier to listen to you seriously. And participate in your neighborhood organizations. The single best way to reach council is through neighborhood organizations.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, there's a good tidbit. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alderman. I do appreciate it so much. Again, I hope you're going to come back. Let me tell everybody that on Thursday, I will have a representative of America's Second Harvest of Coastal Georgia as we're getting primed up for the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive, where postal workers collect some food for the needy. Next week, we're going to have Hospice Savannah is going to be out here as well. Okay, I want you to know that you are listening to WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. That was 107.5 FM. WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. Coming up is another hour of, in this case, unhosted Americana music, followed at 10 by Democracy Now! So I hope you guys will tune in Thursday. And Alderman, thanks again. Listeners, I appreciate you listening to Savannah Lexicon. Tune in